Media is often an exaggerated representation of our stereotypes, but is unfortunately a dangerous misrepresentation of the minoritized populations it portrays.
He can hear it before it makes a sound. He can sense it before it happens. He can vanish before you realize he's there. And he's the last person you'd ever expect.
Those with disabilities fall heavy victim to this harmful misrepresentation.
Back where she belongs.
They are often glorified, villainized, or simply used as comedic
I
relief.
understand you were wounded. Where were you hit?
In the buttocks, sir.
Oh, that must be a sight.
But, despite these negative portrayals, the media has made some steps forward with accurate representation and education of various disabilities.
I'm a weirdo. That's what everyone says. Sometimes I don't know what people mean when they say things.
Sam, people on the spectrum date, you know.
Girls don't really notice me at all, and I'm not great at picking up signals.
She's smiling right at you.
You need to turn that down like 70%.
I need your help.
It's not gonna be easy.
I don't need easy. I just need possible.
The greatest surfers, they know when the best waves are coming. You feel it. You have that gift too.
My dad said, the way I saw the world was a gift.
Yet a lot more progress needs to be made to eliminate ableism.
Have you ever heard of the word ableism?
Probably in passing.
Ableism at all?
Nope.
Nope? Okay.
Are you gonna ask me the definition of it?
No.
Okay.
Are you kind of familiar with ableism at all?
I am familiar with it enough.
So what does ableism kind of mean to you?
Basically just means that people who are disabled are kind of are instantly not as good.
I think it's being discriminating against people that don't have their full, either mental or physical capabilities and that they're handicapped in some way.
So what do you think it kind of means to be disabled?
It's either a mental or physical disadvantage.
Not having the full physical body functioning.
Some sort of lack of something that you should have in a normal functioning, like the ability to have all your five senses or have all your mental capabilities.
The irony in these clips is that ableism is so commonly present in our society, yet rarely talked about. However, while the term may be unfamiliar, the oppression regarding those with disabilities is nothing new. Venturing back as early as the 13th century, when life for most European cultures revolved around religion, the oppression of individuals with disabilities was backed with religious justification. Those deemed mentally ill were labeled as possessed spirits and were often tortured, burned, and whipped. Those that survived were refused shelter and medical support, and as a result, many became beggars living on the street, collecting alms for financial support. This is where the origin of the term handicap came from, as it was a stereotype that those with disabilities used a cap to collect their alms.
In the 1800s, the justification for oppression for those with disabilities shifted from a religious to a scientific lens. Those that were disabled were considered to be genetically inferior and a threat to the gene pool. In order to preserve society's normal genes, those with disabilities were deemed defective and physically isolated from the general public. Here, ableism first becomes institutionalized, as they were segregated into separate educational and residential facilities.
Luckily, in the 1860s, there was a positive shift that sought to incorporate those with disabilities back into society. It was during this time period that the Braille system was introduced. The first college was also established for people with disabilities, so they could acquire the education to enter the workforce.
Throughout the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th, the oppression of those with disabilities turned to the political arena. They were denied the right to move to America, marry, and even procreate, and were often sterilized without consent.
Finally, the 1970s promised social progress for those with disabilities, many of which we see today. Some modern-day examples include wheelchair lifts on mass transit vehicles, curb cuts on streets, and other building modifications. The following decades continued with the social progress, which added social and financial benefits to reduce discrimination in the workforce. However, we are still far from our goal of eliminating ableism in our society today.
Do you see a lot of people kind of around campus that have a disability that you're aware of?
Well,
Not really.
Yeah, I see it every day, just walking to class and I see it.
I don't see it that frequently, honestly. A lot of times you can't see it.
I would say that I probably wouldn't see it because some disabilities can be mental and not really physical.
That I can physically tell, not a ton, but I'm sure they're much more around campus than I realize.
I have some friends that I didn't know that they had, these disabilities until they told me about it. I think that you really can't tell just by looking at them. There's some more physical ones that you can see right off the bat, but you can't really tell just by looking at a person.
Do you see a lot of people with disabilities around campus as a professor at St. Lucie University?
I wouldn't say a lot. There's a handful. I work in the Allied Health Building, and I would say we have 5 individuals, actually several employees, who have physical disabilities. And then as far as campus-wide, there are 10 or so individuals who use a wheelchair for mobility.
Do you think the school does a good job of kind of providing resources for those that have disabilities around campus?
I would hope so.
Yeah, I think
They do some help.
I know my friends who do have those mental and physical disabilities. I know that they definitely have reached out to campus.
And I do think the university does a good job of catering to that.
But as far as I've heard, there definitely is a lack of things.
Since it is a pretty rare thing, I don't see it that often on campus. I think we can always do a better job of that.
Things, for example, the disability resources, as far as I know, is way understaffed. Seems very much like they get help in the beginning, but then past that point, they're very much on their own. I think talking to the one person that was working there, she definitely did feel like they do an okay job more on the academic side of things.
They've been really great at giving them priority registration, offering mental health support, and offering those other financial or other resources that they need.
But then kind of a lot of the kind of social and other kind of just college life stuff, they don't help as much.
Just because with talking to my friend, she has physical disabilities that she can't properly walk. People don't do that for her. You know what I mean? It's not made very easy for her.
I think academic-wise it sounds like they do okay, but a lot of other things that definitely need major improvements on.
The main point is to just make sure that they're aware that there are these resources and to let them know that they're there for them.
Alyssa, and I have generalized anxiety disorder. One time in high school, I was arguing with my mom about why I've been so agitated recently, and she said, "Do you need to see a therapist or something?" By saying that, she minimized the disorder to something that should be handled personally, when in reality, it's a real diagnosable illness that should be treated. And it also gave a negative connotation to therapy. which it shouldn't have because therapy is actually very helpful for a lot of people. I also one time had a boy that I was dating say, oh, you're one of those crazy girls. I've had an ex with anxiety before. And that's kind of assuming that all people with anxiety act the same way, and that's in a negative way.
Hi, my name is Jane, and I have iron deficiency anemia, which is a blood disorder. When I was in 5th grade, after playing outside for recess, my teacher made a comment in front of the whole class about how I had a tomato face, and because of the lack of oxygen in my blood. And at the time, I was not diagnosed, but it was still something that was very humiliating and embarrassing because the disorder, although it's something that you can't, see from looking at someone, like most other disorders, is something that really does affect me, and it affects my ability to be athletic and play sports, which has had a pretty big impact on me growing up and still does today.
And then, as an OT, what do you think the public should know about those with disabilities or ableism in general?
Again, that just because somebody has a disability doesn't mean that they would change their life. If they could take a magic pill or something to that effect, their disability has made them who they are to this day, and they live very meaningful lives, and don't wish for a cure or treatment to be cured of their disability, to treat everybody with respect and as an equal.
Okay.
It depends on the person. Some people they don't like talking about it. Some people don't like asking for that help. If they don't want me to help, then I wouldn't try to butt my way into it. But of course, obviously, if somebody asked for my help or if somebody clarified something for me, that's totally fine.
Are you more inclined to help somebody with a disability?
I will ask them if they would like my help. I don't assume anything. First of all, I think people in general tend to shy away from if they have somebody who they see who uses a wheelchair for mobility and they don't know what to do, and so they try and shy away from them so they don't have to interact with them. But if they are inclined to help them, I think that people assume they want help instead of just asking them if they would like help.
But definitely with enough effort, enough help, there's definitely the ability to get overcome that.
One of our first interventions is education towards the diversity of disability by making social science a mandatory requirement into classrooms, therefore incorporating diversity of disabilities into classes.
A second intervention for the prevention of ableism would be government funding for the inclusion of those with disabilities instead of funding for the segregation of those with disabilities.
Another plausible intervention is integration within schools. This would allow better collaboration. It would allow people with disabilities to become more normalized into the mainstream population of students. And it can also break some of the stereotypes that are associated with ableism.
All in all, we still have a lot of work to do in eliminating ableism in our society. But what we can do is start talking about it and start having conversations with our neighbors.